You step into a quiet grove, where the wind carries stories. Beneath your feet, roots reach and remember. The forest is not silent, only speaking in another language. And now you're beginning to listen. You begin in stillness. There is no road here, only a path woven by deer hooves and time. You step lightly, your shoes brushing moss, your breath catching the scent of damp bark and fallen leaves. Above you, the canopy moves gently, leaves like green hands shifting in conversation with the wind. The deeper you walk, the quieter the forest becomes, but it is not the quiet of emptiness. It is the quiet of listening. A soft crack of twig, a rustle of wings, a hush of pine needles adjusting to your presence. You pause, heart slow, and let your senses open wide. It feels, somehow, as though the forest has been expecting you. Beneath your feet lies a hidden world, not just dirt and stones, but stories, signals, decisions. You can't see them, not yet, but the trees know you're here, each trunk around. You is more than wood. It is a pillar of memory, standing tall in place, rooted yet aware. Inside the bark, under layers of protection and time, flows a quiet urgency, a pulse of sugar and signal, rising like slow breath from the roots to the crown. This is where the whisper begins. The bark, so rough beneath your fingertips, is not armor, it is skin, a living barrier that holds in the forest's voice. You brush your hand along it, and though you hear nothing, something deep within you begins to listen, because trees do speak, not with words, not with sound, but with rhythm, with chemistry, with patience. Their language is one of presence. They speak through scent carried on the breeze, through the sway of their limbs, through electric pulses in roots curled in the dark. You wonder, for a moment, how many messages pass through this grove each day. A leaf nibbled by a beetle sends out a chemical cry. A nearby tree catches the drift and prepares its own defense. Sap hardens, cells tighten, bitterness grows. All this, a conversation of survival, a communal readiness. You take another step, slower now, as if not to interrupt. The forest, it turns out, is not a collection of individuals. It is a society, every trunk a citizen, every root a road. And beneath it all, stretching farther than you can imagine, is a vast, silent web of connection, the forest's nervous system. You can't see the whisper, but it's there. A breeze moves through the grove, tugging gently at your sleeves. It is cooler now, and the shadows stretch long between trees. You pass a cedar, tall and quiet, its bark furrowed with the weight of decades. Inside its rings are winters and springs, droughts and recoveries. It doesn't move, not in the way you do, but its body records every change. Stillness, for trees, is not sleep. It is awareness held in slow motion. They feel the tug of gravity and bend over years. They sense where light falls and grow toward it, inch by careful inch. And underground, they feel each other, root tip to root tip, brushing, recognizing, perhaps even remembering. You kneel beside one of them now, a younger sapling, slender and flexible. Its roots reach down like hands into the unknown. Into what, exactly, you wonder? The ground feels solid, but beneath it, life pulses. The roots of trees do not grow in isolation. They twist and stretch through a living maze. They meet fungi, tiny threads that wrap around their root tips and enter them like old friends. These fungi, in turn, help the tree absorb water and nutrients. In exchange, the tree feeds them sugars from sunlight. This is not exploitation. It is mutual. symbiotic, trust formed underground. You place your palm on the soil, somewhere down. There, a message is moving. Maybe it is a cry for help, a tree under attack, sending a chemical signal through the roots. Maybe it is a quiet transaction, carbon for nitrogen, a trade conducted in molecular language. Maybe it is a lullaby, older trees calming younger ones, easing their stress in dry times by sharing water, wisdom, and shade. Yes, even stress has a scent in the forest. Trees under threat release ethylene, methyl jasmonate, and other compounds that drift invisibly through the air. Their neighbors detect these whispers and adjust, tighten their pores, boost their defenses. The forest in its stillness is constantly adapting. And so you begin to see, not with your eyes, but with your mind. You imagine these invisible threads, these conversations laced through loam and rain. You imagine each tree not as a tower, but as a listener and a messenger. The whisper beneath the bark is not just science, it is communion. Farther ahead, you spot a tree much older than the rest, wider, taller, with deep furrows etched down its trunk like the lines on an elder's face. You approach slowly. This one feels different. The forest quiets more as you near it. Perhaps it has stood here since before you were born, before roads, before fences, maybe before your ancestors. Settled nearby. Its roots stretch farther, its branches shelter more. It has seen saplings rise and fall. It has watched seasons pass like breaths, and now it watches you. You rest your back against its bark. A deep calm settles into your spine. Science calls. These trees, keystone individuals. In some forests, they are called mother trees, not because they birth others, but because they nurture them. Through their roots, they pass nutrients to younger or struggling neighbors. Through underground pathways, they recognize kin, prioritize their survival, and even shape the direction of future growth. You close your eyes. The forest, you realize, is not random. It is relational. It is not silent. It is slow. Trees have no nervous system like yours, no brain, no voice, no ears, and yet they remember, respond, and reach out. They live in deep time, unfolding their awareness across decades. They endure, and in their endurance, they care. You open your eyes and feel different. You are not just standing in a forest. You are standing in a network of intention, and something inside you, something quiet and listening, begins to stretch and reach downward, to not literally, but emotionally. You feel the urge to be still, to root, to belong, because here, among the trees, you are not just a visitor, you are part of the story. The light shifts, a bird calls, the wind leans in again. You look around at the trees one last time before moving on. You walk softer now, not out of fear but respect. With each step, you imagine the conversations humming just below your heels, the shared secrets, the subtle alerts, the soft encouragement from one root to another. You wonder, how does this whisper move from one tree to another? What carries these messages across the soil? And beneath that question, another curiosity stirs, quieter but insistent. Who built the web? You glance down at the forest floor, where the soil is alive with threads too small to see. A different kind of life pulses beneath you, ancient, humble, and essential. The trees do not speak alone. Something else carries their messages, and waits silently in the dark. The forest does not end at the forest floor. What lies beneath? Your feet is not just dirt and decay. It is a world in shadow, not from the absence of light, but from the absence of sight. You cannot see it, but you are standing in the middle of it. A network, vast and ancient, is moving just below you. Not moving in the way wind moves through trees, or deer through underbrush, but in slow, living pulses. It stretches farther than roots, thinner than hair, older than memory. It is not made of bark or leaf, but of thread. Fungal thread, they call it the mycorrhizal network, a hidden lattice of fungi that connects the trees of the forest like a whispering web. And though it has no wires or screens, no silicon or code, it is sometimes called the wood wide web. You shift your weight gently on the moss, somewhere under the soil, those threads shift too. They do not feel your footfalls exactly, but they are sensitive to change, to pressure, to signals. The forest's internet is alive. It begins with a handshake, not the kind you know, but a joining of need and offer. Long ago, trees and fungi made a deal. The trees would feed the fungi sugar from photosynthesis, the light-turned sweetness that only plants can make. In return, the fungi would gather nutrients from the soil, nitrogen, phosphorus, minerals, and pass them to the trees. You give, I give, and in that agreement, something larger emerged. The fungi do not just bond with one tree. Their threads, called hyphae, stretch and branch and fuse into others. They form bridges between tree and tree. They run beneath moss, beneath stone, beneath years of fallen leaves. And what was once a single tree, alone in the soil, becomes part of a network, part of a community. This web has no center, no hub, yet it connects nearly everything. You imagine the map of it, a glowing tangle underfoot, like golden nerve endings reaching through the dark. You walk slowly, picturing those filaments twining between roots. One thread touches a birch, another a fir. One stretches toward a dead log, still rich with nutrients. Another wraps around the root of a newborn sapling, feeding it from the wisdom of the old dot. Not all fungi build networks like this, but those that do, the mycorrhizal fungi, are forest architects, silent go-betweens, translators, couriers. They don't speak in words, but in chemicals. When one tree is stressed, attacked by beetles, say, or starved for light, it can release a signal into its roots. That signal enters the fungal web. The fungi carry it, molecule by molecule, to other trees, and the forest responds. A neighboring tree may send extra sugar to the struggling one, or withdraw its own water slightly, allowing the roots nearby to drink more in times of drought. This network becomes a lifeline, and in times of danger, it becomes an alarm system. You come to a clearing. The trees are thinner here, younger. A few old stumps remain broad, moss-covered, hollowed by time. One stump catches your eye. It has no branches, no leaves, no crown, yet its wood is not dry. It is moist, green, with life. How? You kneel beside it. What you're seeing is a tree that has died, but not been abandoned. Other trees nearby are still feeding it through the fungal network. They are sending sugars through their roots, through the mycorrhizae, to keep the stump alive. Why? No one knows for certain. Perhaps it once sheltered them when they were saplings. Perhaps it still offers nutrients or microbial allies in return. Or perhaps, in this forest, life is shared, not because it must be, but because it can be. You run your fingers over the stump's surface. It feels warm, somehow, not in temperature, but in intention, like someone remembered it. The idea that trees communicate used to sound like fantasy. Now it is science. Experiments have traced carbon moving from tree to tree, not just between family, but across species. Nutrients pass from birch to fir, fir to cedar, cedar to pine. They don't just feed their kin. Sometimes they feed their neighbors, especially when light is scarce or illness is near. These exchanges aren't random. They are precise, responsive, almost thoughtful. The forest is not a competition. It is a conversation. You take a step back and look up at the canopy. The leaves, the light, the reaching limbs. It's easy to think the most important part of the forest is what you see. The trees stretching skyward, the birds in their branches, the sun trickling through green dot. But now you know the true heart of the forest lies beneath. You walk on, the path soft with pine needles. Your steps are slower now. With each movement, you wonder what threads you cross, what signals might be passing below you. The fungi, after all, are not silent participants. They don't just carry messages, they sometimes choose which to carry. Some fungi seem to favor certain trees, boosting their signals or granting them more nutrients. Others suppress or block signals from intruders. And some trees, too, seem to favor certain fungi, offering them more sugar in return for better nutrients. It's not a simple world of charity. It is a web of preferences, memory, consequence, not love, not war, just life, rich and tangled and full of choice. A squirrel darts across the path ahead of you. You pause to watch it vanish into a thicket of ferns. And you wonder, does it know? Does it feel what you now feel? That the forest is alive in ways that go unseen? Probably not in the way you do. But still, the squirrel depends on trees for food. The trees depend on fungi for nutrients. The fungi depend on roots for sugar. The roots depend on soil. The soil depends on rot and rain. And round it goes. No part stands alone. Long ago, when humans first walked among forests, they likely understood this without knowing the names. They noticed which mushrooms grew near which trees. They saw where plants thrived and where they failed. They may have watched a grove decline after a single tree fell, without realizing why. But now, with microscopes and sensors and time-lapse film, we know what lies beneath. We've seen the hyphae, tiny and white, threading through the dark. We've measured the carbon as it flows from one root to another. We've watched seedlings survive better when plugged into the network. And we've realized something strange. These networks aren't just support systems. They are memory systems. Fungi remember past droughts. Roots remember past allies. Trees grow differently depending on what their neighbors have experienced. Some seedlings connected to the network respond faster to threat than those without it, as if the forest has already briefed them on the dangers, wisdom, stored in wood and fungus. You pause at a bend in the trail and rest your hand on the trunk of a slim pine. It doesn't speak, but now you imagine what it might be saying through the ground beneath you. To another tree, I've found water. To a fungus, here is sugar. For what you brought me yesterday, to the air, danger has passed, and through it all, you realize there is no single voice, just a harmony, a collaboration so fine-tuned it feels like thought. The sun is beginning to fall. Its light stretches long and golden across the forest floor. You watch as it filters through the branches and lands on a young maple sapling, barely taller than your knee. It shivers, not in fear, but in presence. It is part of this too. It does not grow alone. Even now, its roots are reaching toward the threads. The fungi are already touching its tips, inviting it in. Soon it will join the whispering web. It will hear and be heard. You step aside and let the light warm its leaves. The air smells of cedar and cool earth. You breathe in slowly, deeply, and feel your chest rise, then fall like the branches overhead. It's hard to believe something so complex can be so quiet. But maybe quiet doesn't mean empty. Maybe quiet is how the world does its best thinking. As you follow the trail out of the grove, your footsteps feel lighter. You look at the trees again, not as individuals, but as voices in a long shared song. Not competing for space, but holding space for each other. You wonder if over time they learn each other's rhythms. If trees that live together for decades become more than neighbors, become something closer to kin, something tuned. You wonder what it feels like to grow like that, slowly, in company. And you wonder if a forest listens to itself so well. How do the trees speak without words? You leave the shadows of the grove behind, but your thoughts stay, rooted there, where the fungi move like breath, and trees lean toward each other in silence. The forest does not need a voice to speak. Its language is older, stranger, more alive. And still, you wonder, how does a tree talk without a tongue? You sit now at the edge of the clearing. The forest around you hums, not with noise, but with presence, a stillness that is not empty, just deeply aware. You listen, not with your ears, but with your attention. It's easy to believe the forest is silent. There are no words here, no sentences, no punctuation. But the longer you sit, the more you begin to notice a shift in the light, the curve of a branch, the way the wind brushes the leaves of one tree more insistently than another. You are learning a new kind of listening. Trees, after all, have no mouths, no tongues to form syllables, no breath to push sound, and yet they speak. Not as you do, not through speech, but through signs, patterns, touch, chemistry. They are fluent in the language of time. Where you use seconds, trees use seasons. Where you use sound, trees use space. A tree will lean slowly toward its neighbor, not in greeting, but in negotiation. It will angle its leaves to catch sunlight, but never so rudely that it casts another into permanent shadow. Even their growth is a conversation, spoken in inches. The trees around you are not loud, but they are never mute. One of the ways they speak is through scent. When a leaf is wounded, torn by the bite of an insect, or broken by the weight of weather, the tree sends a signal into the air. Molecules rise, invisible but sharp, like smoke without fire. These are volatile organic compounds, and they carry meaning. Nearby trees pick up the scent, like neighbors catching a whiff of trouble through an open window. They respond, their own. Leaves begin producing bitter chemicals, tannins and toxins that make their greenery less appetizing to the incoming threat. It's not panic, it's preparation, and it happens faster than you'd expect. In one study, when giraffes began nibbling the leaves of acacia trees in the African savanna, those trees released a warning sent into the air. Downwind, other acacias received the message, and within minutes, they began pumping their leaves full of bitterness. The giraffes, not fond of the taste, moved on. But here's the twist. The giraffes learned to walk upwind so that the message wouldn't arrive in time. Even animals, it seems, know the trees are talking, but scent is not the only way. Beneath the bark, inside every trunk, trees carry quiet messages in their veins. The xylem and phloem, two highways of fluid transport, water, nutrients, and sugars. but they also carry signals. When the soil grows dry, trees sense the change not only in their roots, but in their leaves. They release a hormone called abscisic acid. It travels upward, gently instructing the leaves to close their pores, conserving moisture like a whispered caution. Be still now. Wait. It's like your own body tightening in cold. No need to speak. The message lives in sensation. And then, of course, there's electricity. Not sparks and wires, but delicate, organic pulses. Trees generate electrical signals in response to stimuli. When roots touch something unexpected, stone, heat, salt, another root, they send a tiny signal to adjust their growth. It's slow, subtle, but measurable. Scientists have observed these pulses echoing through a tree's body after injury, like a nervous system without a brain. It doesn't think like you, but it notices, and it responds. The tree is not numb. It is aware. Even the direction a tree grows can be part of its speech. A branch arching low may be making room for another's rise. A trunk leaning sideways may be steering around an old neighbor's memory. A cluster of trees growing in a spiral may have been twisted by winds long past and now continue the pattern as if remembering a story told by air. Nothing is random here. Every movement is slow, but purposeful, like writing in a language that does not need ink. You run your hand gently over the bark of a nearby tree, rough, warm from the sun. Beneath it, cells are dividing, some becoming wood, others becoming skin. Beneath that, sap moves in waves, following the pull of gravity and light. And within the sap, messages, molecules, hormones, electrical traces, all of it orchestrated by need, by circumstance, by time. This tree is not a tower, it is a channel. It receives, it responds, it sends. You think of your own language, how much you depend on it to connect, to explain, to be understood. And you wonder, could you learn to speak without words? To let your actions carry meaning, to allow your presence, your choices, your silences to say something real, because the trees are doing that. Every day they do not rush to reply, they do not interrupt, they simply notice, adapt, support, grow. Their language has no alphabet, but it holds wisdom. You pause beneath a willow now, her branches like trailing thoughts. The willow is sensitive to change, one of the first to bud in spring, one of the first to bow in drought. She speaks through movement, her long arms catching the wind's intent before it settles on the others. Even her shape feels like a kind of reverence. If you listen closely, you can almost hear it. I bend so others don't break. That's not science. That's story, but sometimes the two are not so far apart. As the light softens, shadows stretch across the forest floor. The air cools. You wrap your arms gently around yourself and breathe in. Somewhere nearby, a pine lets loose its soft, clean scent, perhaps disturbed by a bird or nudged by a breeze. The message is not urgent, it's just there like a sigh. Even now, the trees are still speaking. You just have to slow down enough to match their pace. Science tells us that tree communication is complex, a tapestry of scent, chemistry, root touch, fungal threads, and cellular electricity. But the forest doesn't explain itself, it just keeps living. And in doing so, it teaches you that language does not need words, that connection does not need speed, that presence, when sustained with care, becomes its own kind of message. You do not need to understand it all to feel it. You rise slowly and walk on. Your steps soft now, deliberate. As you move through the trees, you begin to feel part of the rhythm, not apart from it. The path curves gently, guiding you toward another stand of trees, taller, older, more tightly clustered. They seem to lean toward one among them, a larger tree with broad branches and deep bark. The others gather around her, almost like a family. You pause, feeling something shift, not in the air, but in the way the forest feels denser here, a little more tender. You wonder what kind of tree this is, but more than that you wonder what role it plays in the quiet chorus of this woodland. Some trees, after all, carry more than leaves. They carry memory, they carry kin, they carry the weight and wisdom of entire groves. They are not just old, they are central, and they may be the ones that hold the forest together. The trees grow closer here, the air thick with something unspoken. Their trunks lean gently toward a silent elder rooted deep in the earth. You feel the gravity of her presence, not a queen, not a ruler perhaps, a mother. You walk into a hush of green shadow. The light here is softer, diffused through branches, thick with memory. Around you, trunks rise like columns in a great breathing cathedral. The air smells of moss and rain-soaked bark. You breathe slowly, listening for something older than sound. The forest feels closer here. You take a step, then pause. There, in the middle of the grove, stands a tree unlike the others. She is not the tallest, though her crown brushes the sky. She is not the widest, though her base spreads broad and gnarled, like a skirt of roots. But there is something in her stillness, something in the way the younger trees seem to lean toward her, as though they remember her, as though she remembers them. This is what some scientists call a mother tree, not because she gives birth in the way animals do, but because she sustains life. She shares nutrients. She recognizes her kin. She guides the growth of the forest around her, not with orders, but with generosity. You walk closer. Her bark is furrowed and textured like folded paper. Her limbs stretch wide, casting a sheltering shade beneath her. Saplings grow, not in rows, but in rhythms. Some close, others farther off. You notice how the light filters through the leaves above, dappled and gentle. It's not coincidence. She has carved space for them, beneath the soil. Something remarkable is happening. Her roots are vast, spreading in every direction like a subterranean starburst. Entangled with them are threads of fungi, weaving her into the network. These mycorrhizal threads connect her not just to the earth, but to the trees around her, especially the young ones. Some of these saplings are her genetic offspring. Others are simply neighbors. Yet she sends them carbon, the sugars she makes from light through her roots and into theirs, especially when they're shaded and small, especially when they need it. You kneel beside one of the saplings. Its leaves are pale, reaching eager for sunlight. But in the shadow of the canopy, it cannot make enough food on its own. And so, the mother tree feeds it. She does this wordlessly, quietly, over days and nights, months and seasons. There is no announcement, just steady nourishment in the dark. You close your eyes. Some part of you recognizes this rhythm, the giving, without needing thanks, the sense of presence that watches even when unseen. In your own life, you've known this feeling. The memory of someone older placing a hand on your shoulder, a meal left waiting, a door held open, a silence filled with warmth. This tree does the same. Not because she must, but because she can, and in this forest, where so much depends on light and time, That choice makes all the difference. Mother trees are not rare, but they are special. In many forests, a small number of trees form the core of the underground network. They connect to hundreds of others. They help regulate the flow of nutrients. They send alerts about insects, drought, disease, and they remember. Studies show that mother trees can distinguish their kin from unrelated trees. When given the choice, they allocate more resources to their own seedlings than to strangers. They sense their presence, likely through root chemicals, or perhaps shared fungal connections, and favor them. But they don't exclude the others. Even unrelated trees receive care when they struggle. You open your eyes again and look around. Some of the saplings are strong now. Some are still weak, yet all seem to lean toward her, as if listening. Perhaps they are. The forest is not a place of endless competition. That is the story often told, that trees fight for light, battle for space, choke each other with shade. But the truth is softer. Yes, they compete, but they also collaborate. They share, they warn, they guide, and mother trees are at the heart of that. When one is cut down, the effects ripple through the grove. Saplings once nurtured grow slower, networks break, communication fades. It's not just the loss of one tree, it's the unraveling of a hub. You think of neighborhoods when elders move away, the quiet that follows, the way conversations stop at corners where they once bloomed. It is like that here too. You move closer to the mother tree's trunk. The base is wide and buttressed, flaring where it meets the earth. You touch the bark with your palm. It's rough, but warm in places, soaked in sun and years. Beneath that bark, fluids rise and fall with the day. Sugars made in the crown trickle down. Messages pulse upward from roots. She is not idle. She is always responding. You imagine how long she has stood here, how many storms have passed through her limbs, how many springs she's watched unfold. You walk around her slowly, circling in reverence. On one side, a sapling has grown a little, taller than the rest. Its leaves are darker, more nourished. You wonder if it was the first, the one she recognized as her own, the one she sent a little more to when times were lean. But the others still thrive. This is not favoritism in the way humans sometimes mean it. It is balance, a kind of invisible triage. She gives where giving matters most. Even in decay, she gives. If a mother tree begins to die from lightning, drought, age, she doesn't simply fall silent. Her roots may release a final burst of carbon, nutrients, and signaling compounds. A last act of redistribution. A legacy passed through the soil. You picture it, her final sugars moving outward like ripples. Not a farewell, a preparation, and in her place, one of the saplings will grow stronger, stretching upward, taking more light, extending new roots into the old space, but never quite alone. The fungal web remembers, the trees around remember, and so she lives on. Not in name, not in thought, but in nourishment. You find a place to sit near her base. There's a softness here in the moss, in the air, in the feeling that something immense is resting nearby, not watching, but holding space. Mother trees don't rush. They don't explain. They don't instruct with noise. They simply stay rooted and reliable, season after season. In the stillness, you begin to notice something else. The saplings do not grow in straight lines. They curve, they grow toward each other. Their trunks, while young, lean gently in patterns, as if mapping a memory. They are not just reaching for light. They are growing in relation to one another, as if shaped by unseen arms. Some researchers believe trees that grow up together stay connected for life, even after competition begins. They share more resources with familiar roots. They show preference, even in maturity. It's not sentimental, it's structural. Roots remember the past. They remember who was close, who gave first, who remained during drought, and they respond. The forest, it turns out, is full of echoes. You run your fingers through the leaf litter near your feet. Beneath it, soil. Beneath that, roots. Beneath that, fungi. Beneath all of it, a shared memory of what has come before. The story of a forest is not told in trunks alone. It's told in relationships. Every new tree carries part of the old. The saplings, nourished by a mother tree, grow with a kind of advantage, not just physical, but informational. They receive chemical signals that shape how they respond to threats. They inherit knowledge through root and fungus. They are, in some way, mentored, and when they grow tall enough, they begin to give. The cycle deepens. The memory continues. The sky begins to shift, gold melting into blue. You look up and see the mother tree's leaves glowing in the low light. They flutter slightly, as if exhaling. You rise, brushing off your palms, and take one last look around. This place feels different now. Not just peaceful, but purposeful. You've always thought of trees as standing alone. Now you see them in families, in constellations, in systems of support, and you feel something in your chest, soft, ancient, familiar, because somewhere inside you, too, are rings of memory, not made of wood, but of time, people who guided you, people you guided, the ways you've shaped others with presence, with silence, with giving. The forest's inside you. You turn slowly and begin to walk back down the path. The light fades, and the younger trees close around you again. But something deeper is beginning to bloom in your thoughts. A question not of care, but of caution. Because not all messages in the forest are gifts. Some are warnings. The breeze shifts, and with it, a strange, bitter scent brushes past your face. Not sweet like pine, not earthy like soil. A sharpness that seems to come with intention, as though somewhere in the trees ahead, a message is being carried on the wind. You walk through the grove with quiet feet above you. The canopy sways gently, leaves shimmering in late light. All around, trunks stand like watchful elders, rooted and aware. The air is still, but something in it catches your attention. A scent, not the deep comfort of moss or the resin of pine, not the crispness of distant rain. This one is different, sharp, dry, almost bitter. You pause, nose tilted slightly, and breathe it in again. It smells like a warning, and in this forest, warnings ride on the wind. Long before the forest made sense to science, it made sense to itself. It learned to speak without mouths, to listen without ears. And one of its oldest forms of speech is scent, invisible, fast, and laced with meaning. When danger approaches, the trees don't scream. They whisper. A beetle chews a leaf. A branch snaps under weight. An animal grazes too greedily. And the tree, seemingly silent, seemingly still, begins to respond. It happens on the molecular level. The wounded tree produces compounds in its leaves, a kind of biochemical signal. These molecules rise into the air, carried by the breeze, like smoke from a hidden flame. Nearby trees catch the signal through tiny pores on their leaves, and when they do, they begin to act. They tighten their stomata to reduce exposure. They increase the production of bitter chemicals in their sap. They shift their energy inward toward protection. The message is clear. Something is coming. Be ready. You sit beneath a young acacia and picture it unfolding. Far away, in the grasslands of Africa, a giraffe stretches its neck toward a leafy crown. Its tongue curls around a tender shoot, and with a practiced pull, it eats. But this is no quiet theft. Within minutes, the tree sends out ethylene, a gaseous signal of distress. Downwind, other acacias receive the alarm. Before the giraffe arrives, they've begun to fill their leaves with tannins, bitter and appetizing compounds that make each bite less rewarding. The giraffe moves on. Perhaps upwind this time, where the message hasn't reached yet. Even the animals, it seems, have learned to listen to trees. Here in this forest, you wonder what the warnings might be. A sudden drop in moisture, a bark beetle's invasion, a nibble from a deer, the scent of fire far away. Trees don't just react, they prepare. They send alerts to others, and sometimes even adjust their own chemistry in anticipation. And while each signal is shaped by species, climate, and cause, the purpose is the same: protect the forest together. This kind of communication is called plant-plant signaling. It was once dismissed as fantasy. Now it's science. In controlled experiments, trees exposed to wounds released airborne chemicals. Nearby trees, with no physical contact, began shifting their internal chemistry in direct response. Even in sealed chambers, the response only occurred when airflow from the wounded plant reached the others. No wind, no warning. And so you begin to think of the wind differently, not just as a carrier of leaves or cool air, but of language, a breath between trees. A messenger with no form but immense consequence. The idea that trees speak in molecules feels strange at first, but your body does the same. When you feel fear, your body releases cortisol. When you feel connection, oxytocin rises. You emit scent. Signals too, imperceptible, subconscious, but real. Animals have done this for millions of years. Why not trees? Just because their signals are slower or subtler doesn't make them less intelligent. The forest speaks in a dialect of time. You rest your back against a maple and imagine it sensing the air. Its leaves flutter slightly. Tiny pores, called stomata, their surface like breathing mouths. Through them, the tree inhales not just carbon dioxide, but also chemical traces from the world around it. If danger is nearby, those pores don't just open. They become ears, listening for threat, listening for change. You feel your own chest rise and fall, mirroring that rhythm. You, too, are porous to your environment. You, too, are changed by what you breathe. Not all trees respond equally. Some are more reactive. Some send stronger signals. Some pick up on warnings meant for others, a kind of cross-species empathy. A beech might learn from a birch. A cedar might respond to a fir. And in mixed forests, this shared sensitivity becomes protection. It's not the strength of one tree that ensures survival. It's the sensitivity of the many you walk deeper into. The woods, where the light softens and the air grows cool. The warning scent has faded now, replaced by the wet sweetness of ferns and fallen leaves. But the feeling of alertness lingers, as if the trees remember the message that passed. Moments ago, you wonder how long these memories last. In some cases, scientists have found that trees primed by warnings retain the information for days, even weeks. They respond more quickly to future threats. They remember, not with neurons, but with molecules. Not in brains, but in bodies. You step over a fallen log, its bark crumbling into spongy pieces. Once this tree too may have sent warnings. Now it gives in another way, offering shelter, nutrients, space. Even in decay, a tree contributes. The network remains. The memory remains. You touch a nearby trunk and feel the grain beneath your fingers. A language without letters, but not without meaning. In the forest, not all danger comes from outside. Sometimes the threat is drought, or disease, or imbalance. Trees monitor more than animals. They track the weather, the soil, the tilt of the seasons, and they adjust accordingly. Their messages, though invisible, ripple through the grove. Prepare, conserve, hold fast. It is not panic, it is practice. The forest has done this before. You imagine the canopy as a series of watchtowers, each tree not only surviving, but watching. Out for others, the wind as a thread that ties them all together. A chemical language, yes, but also a kind of care. The trees are not passive. They participate, they take in the world, and they shape it, and so do you. Even now, sitting among their trunks, you are taking in signals, subtle cues from the earth. The scent of weather shifting, the tone of the light. Your skin absorbs the temperature. Your eyes adjust to the darkening green. Your ears catch the wind's murmur. You're more like the forest than you thought, more alive in stillness, more aware in quiet. You reach the bend in the trail where branches curve like arms. Arching above you, a grove of younger trees stands close. Together, their leaves brighter, their trunks thinner. They've grown here under the guidance of older roots. They've learned when to stiffen, when to soften. The warnings of their elders shape their resilience. You watch as their branches sway in unison, catching a new gust of wind. Perhaps another message rides within it. A shift in season, a hint of rain, a memory passed, leaf to leaf. The light begins to dim. Evening approaches slowly, folding the forest in twilight. You breathe in again, not with fear, but with a calm knowing. The trees are not caught unaware, even as night falls. Their senses remain open, their vigilance is constant, but never frantic. You wonder what else they sense, what else they prepare for, not just from animals or drought, but from deeper patterns, long-term changes, shifting climates, strange rhythms that were once familiar. You wonder if the air carries warnings. Might the trees also know when time itself begins to change? The breeze settles, the forest exhales. You stand still, a single body among thousands, listening to a silence that isn't truly silent. There are messages still riding the air, but deeper than wind, deeper than scent. Some trees keep their time by something quieter still. The forest does not hurry. It moves in rhythms, too slow for clocks, too deep for calendars. Yet somehow it always knows what time it is. You walk through golden light, slanting sideways across the trunks. The day leans toward dusk. A breeze stirs the canopy above, scattering soft beams of amber and dust. And beneath your feet, roots hold steady, as if they've felt this hour arrive 1,000 times before. Trees do not glance at the sky to check the time. They feel it. They respond not to numbers, but to light. Somehow, the trees know when to wake, before the sun crests the horizon, before its first warmth brushes the tips of the branches. Something inside the leaves begins to stir. A shift in chemistry, a swell of movement, a change in posture. As dawn approaches, cells within the leaves begin to open. Tiny mouths, called stomata, prepare to breathe in carbon dioxide and drink the light of day. Sugars begin to form. Water begins to climb. Sap begins to rise, and still, not a sound, only movement, deliberate, slow, assured. You run your hand across a nearby branch and wonder how it knows when to begin again. Within the cells of this tree and all the others around you are tiny molecular clocks, not clocks like those on your wrist or wall. These clocks are woven into the tree's very being. Made of proteins and genes, they tick in cycles, oscillating back and forth, guiding the tree's rhythms across hours and seasons. This is the circadian rhythm, a 24-hour internal timekeeper that helps the tree match its biology to the world outside. When light changes, the clock responds. When darkness falls, the clock prepares. Photosynthesis, leaf movement, sugar transport, all tuned to this ancient rhythm, even in total darkness. This clock keeps ticking. It doesn't guess. It remembers. You sit now beneath a beech tree, its leaves still trembling with late light. If you were to stay here until morning, you'd see its branches subtly lift with the dawn, as if stretching awake. If you stayed until night, you'd feel the canopy slowly soften, conserving energy, closing pores. Resting, a tree does not sleep exactly, but it does rest. Its metabolism slows. Its flow eases. Its posture changes. It follows the same sun you do, but it speaks to it differently. Even seedlings, newly sprouted and hidden under soil, carry this clock inside. Scientists have grown young plants in complete darkness, and still the rhythm appears. The tiny cells begin their daily cycle on their own, as if remembering the light even when they cannot see it. You imagine that, a memory of sun etched into the smallest parts of being, you, to carry such clocks in your brain, your blood, your skin, the same basic rhythm that governs your sleep and wake also, hums inside the trees. You are not so different, but trees do not live by day and night alone. They follow longer patterns. To the turn of seasons, the rise and fall of temperature, the balance of moisture and light. Each of these cycles presses gently on their inner clocks, tuning them over time like instruments in an orchestra in spring. Buds begin to swell, not just because of the warmth, but because of lengthening daylight. Photoreceptors inside the tree's cells measure how long light lasts. When the days cross a certain threshold, the tree receives the cue. It's time to grow. You walk by a maple now, its leaves wide and green. You wonder how it knew, weeks ago, to begin again. There was no announcement, no countdown, only light. Only time. In autumn, the same clock reverses course. As daylight shortens, the tree senses the shift. It slows sugar production. It pulls nutrients from its leaves and stores them in its roots. The green fades, and pigments of amber and fire take its place. But this isn't death. It's memory, a preparation for winter, a lesson learned from every year before. You kneel near a small birch sapling, its trunk slim and silver. Even it, barely taller than your shoulder, is following the same rhythm. Its cells are already preparing for the colder days to come. Even while summer still lingers, its clock ticks quietly beneath the bark. And then there's the moon. You felt it yourself, the way your sleep sometimes bends with the full moon's rise. Trees feel it too. In some species, root growth subtly shifts with lunar cycles. Water transport changes. Night activity fluctuates. The moon does not speak loudly, but it still leaves an imprint. In mangrove forests, trees time their seed release. With the tides, which are pulled by the moon's hand, seeds fall into the water when the tide is high, floating far from the parent tree, carried by lunar rhythm. Each drop of water, each rise of root, moonlight marks them all. It's humbling, you think, how precisely tuned these beings are, without watches, without calendars, without reminders. They still remember when to bloom, when to let go, when to sleep. Not in response to commands, but in relationship with the world around them. Sunlight, darkness, warmth, cool, moisture, dryness, all messages, all part of the clock, and each tree responds in its own way. You notice now how some leaves are already turning slightly at the edges. It's not yet autumn, not fully, but the trees are preparing. They've measured the days, they've counted the light, they've begun their slow, graceful transition. You wonder if you too have seasons inside, times of turning inward, times of stretching outward, moments of stillness that prepare for change. In some experiments, scientists expose trees to artificial light at night, just enough to change the perceived length of the day, and the trees responded. They delayed their leaf fall, they shifted their growth. Their clocks became confused. It was as if the forest had lost its timekeeper, and you feel a quiet awe at how much trees depend on light, not just to live, but to know when to live. You pass a grove of firs now, their trunks tall and straight. They too are guided by time, not just hours and days, but decades. Some of them won't release seeds for years, not until conditions are just right. Some pines wait for fire, some oaks wait for frost. Each timing is deliberate. Not all clocks are fast, not all movement is meant to be seen. Inside the heartwood of each tree are rings wide and narrow, dark and pale. You've seen them before in fallen logs, but now you think of them differently, not as records, as rhythms. Each ring a beat, each line a breath. Inside those lines is a history of time, not just the passage of years, but the feeling of each year. The dry ones, the generous ones, the ones where roots held tight through storms, timekeepers in the bark. You stop at the base of a cedar and place both palms on its trunk. You don't feel a ticking, no beat beneath your hands, but you sense something, not measurable, but real, a steadiness, a presence, a confidence in the quiet. This tree doesn't rush. It knows with certainty where it stands in time. You close your eyes and for a moment try to feel the rhythm within your own body, your breath, your pulse, the gentle pull of tiredness as evening falls. The day has spoken. The night begins to answer. You are not outside of time. You are folded within it. You begin walking again, the path soft beneath your feet. The forest darkens, gently, but not fearfully. Each tree knows how to be in this hour. Each one carries its own light within, stored from the sun, measured and remembered. You, too, are learning to move with the rhythm, not ahead of it. And as you round the bend, a thought settles quietly in your mind. If trees can keep time without clocks, might they also remember time in other ways? You look to the thick trunk of an old pine, its surface rough with age. Inside, unseen, is a spiral of memory written in wood. A tree does not forget its seasons. And tomorrow, you'll learn how each ring remembers the storms it has lived through. You find yourself standing before a fallen giant, its trunk, wide as a table, lies open to the sky, split clean where lightning or wind or time has laid it down. Moss already creeps along its length, softening what was once strength. Insects hum around the exposed wood. The forest wastes nothing, but your eyes are drawn to the cross-section at its base, a smooth circle polished by weather and wonder, and within it, rings. Countless delicate rings, fanned out like ripples in still water, one after another, from the heartwood at the center to the outermost bark. You crouch beside them, fingertips brushing the grain, each one a year, each one a memory. Trees grow from the inside out. Each spring, when the sun returns and water rises through the roots, new cells form just beneath the bark. These cells stretch quickly, growing large and full of water, creating pale, soft wood. Then, as summer deepens and water grows scarce, the cells shrink and darken, growth slows, and by autumn the ring is complete. Next spring, the process begins again, laying another ring around the last, a record kept not in ink, but in layers of life. You trace the rings with your eyes. Some are wide, spaced generously apart, years of good rain, warm sun, long growing seasons. Others are tight, pressed close, years of drought, of shadow, of struggle. You can almost feel the story behind them. Here, perhaps, was a year of fire, when flames swept the understory, and the tree barely clung to its roots. Here, a year of plenty, when the canopy thinned and the light poured in. Here, a winter that came too early, freezing the last of the sap before it could retreat. To safety, each ring responds not only to the tree's own life, but to the world around it. This process of ring formation is called dendrochronology, the science of tree time. Scientists use these rings to look backward, sometimes hundreds, even thousands of years. By comparing ring patterns from trees across a region, they can align overlapping lives like puzzle pieces, and suddenly the forest becomes a timeline. You can see when volcanoes erupted, when rivers flooded their banks, when drought lingered for a decade, and life bent low beneath the sky. The rings remember what we forget. You sit quietly now, hand resting gently on the log. You wonder what this tree saw, how many storms passed through its limbs, how many birds nested in its branches, how many nights it stood listening to the wind. Its roots may have touched others, sharing messages, food, companionship. You think of trees that once stood nearby, now gone, and yet their memory lingers here in the pattern of the rings, not just in the tree's own growth, but in how it grew alongside others. A year when a neighbor fell might have brought more sunlight. A year when the canopy thickened might have shaded this trunk. Even absence leaves its trace. You look again at the rings toward the center. They're darker, denser, the heartwood. These cells no longer carry water or nutrients. They're filled with resins and tannins, toughening over time. Strong, durable. But even though they no longer live, they support the tree. They hold its history, protect its core, and give it strength. It reminds you of how memory works in your own life. The past may not be active, but it shapes how you stand. It holds you steady in the wind. It thickens with time, but it never disappears. Each year adds something, a little more structure, a little more resilience, a little more story. Trees do not rush their remembering. They do not decide what to hold on to. They simply do. They grow, and what they grow through becomes part of them. And in that slow, silent process, they build a biography in wood. You rise now and continue along the trail to your right. A grove of younger trees leans gently toward the light. Their trunks are smooth, their bark unmarked by lichen or age. Inside them, just a few rings have formed, maybe 10, maybe 20. Their stories are just beginning. You think of them as journals still being written. And as you walk, you begin to imagine what their rings might someday say. Not all stories are recorded in growth. Sometimes trees carry trauma in their rings. Signs of stress, of damage, of sudden change. A deep scar might show where lightning struck. A warped pattern might reveal the years after disease crept in. Rings leaning in one direction may hint at landslides or long-forgotten shifts in the earth. Even fire leaves its trace, a blackened wound within the layers, sealed by new wood but never erased. The tree does not deny its past. It builds around it. You pause beside an old pine with a long scar spiraling up its side. The bark has grown thick around the wound, folding in like hands holding a memory close. Still alive, still rising, you reach out and touch it gently. There is no shame in remembering. In some forests, entire communities carry the same memory. When drought stretches across a region, trees of many species all show narrow rings from those years. Insects, climate shifts, even air pollution, they leave collective fingerprints. And just as trees respond together, they remember together. You think again of the fungal networks underground, of roots passing signals, water, sugars, perhaps stories too, not in words, but in chemistry. Memory, you realize, is not just personal, it is ecological. You step through a patch of golden ferns, soft and fragrant beneath your legs. The air feels cooler now. Evening is near. The trees lean a little more in shadow, their branches growing quiet. You pause beside a spruce, still standing, its bark cracked with age. It's tall, easily 100 feet. You wonder how old it is. There is no way to know without cutting it down, but still, its story is inside, waiting, resting, not eager to be read, but not hiding either. Some trees live for centuries, others for millennia. In California, pines have been standing for over 4,000 years, each one a library of dry, resin-rich memory. In Sweden, the roots of a clonal spruce forest date back 9,500 years. The trunks come and go, but the root system endures, sharing and remembering through generations. Imagine that a root that has known glaciers, a tree that remembers when mountains were still forming, a forest that keeps time across ages. You feel very small and very connected. You sit again, this time beneath a sycamore whose leaves flutter like paper in the breeze. You lean back against its broad trunk and close your eyes. Inside this tree, another ring is forming, slow and silent. It doesn't know what words you speak. It doesn't care what calendar you follow, but it feels the warmth of your presence, the press of your back, the rhythm of the day as it changes. It will carry this moment to not as a thought, not as a picture, but as a change in its body, a small shift in the great spiral of time. You think now of your own life, how your memories are held, not just in thoughts, but in your body, in the way your shoulders carry stress, in the tilt of your head when you listen, in the quiet warmth you feel when someone kind stands close. You are a living record too. You have rings no one can see. The sky dims. A bird calls once, then disappears. Into the canopy you rise slowly, brush the leaves from your legs, and return to the path. The wind picks up, carrying the scent of bark and moss, and something older, the perfume of history as you walk. You begin to feel the rhythm again, each footstep a ring, each breath a season, each memory a layer. Inside you, you round a bend and pass a cluster of trees tightly grouped. You stop. Their trunks are thinner, their crowns lower, but something about them feels musical. You look closer and notice the spacing, the timing, the rhythm of their branches. The forest here is not remembering, it is singing. You linger, listening to a harmony you cannot name. The wind moves gently through the leaves, not loud, not precise, but patterned like breath or tide. You wonder if time in the forest isn't only marked in wood, but played softly in the seasons. Time does not pass the same way in the forest. Here, it unfolds like music, not a ticking clock, but a composition. You do not hear seconds, you feel shifts, a lengthening light, a softening breeze, the rustle of leaves changing their pitch. You stand now in a clearing, surrounded on all sides by quiet trees, and slowly you begin to listen for the song. The forest doesn't sing in melodies, it sings in movement, in how the leaves unfold and fall, how the roots drink deeper or wait. It sings in the shifting tones of green and gold, the tempo of rainfall, the hush of snow. Each season is a new movement in a longer piece. The same players, but changing tones. You tilt your face upward. The trees sway gently, as if tuning. Their instruments spring arrives first, not with fanfare, but with suggestion. A little more light in the morning, a dampness in the air that smells of earth beginning again. Buds forming on bare branches like small notes waiting to be played. You feel it in the soil before you see it, roots stirring, fungi waking, sap starting its slow upward pull. Deep inside the trees, sugar begins to rise from the roots, carried in pulses like the first heartbeat of a song. Each day, the rhythm quickens. Leaves unroll like soft piano keys. Petals open, pollen drifts. Insects buzz and hum their part. The forest begins to play itself alive. Spring is not hurried. It arrives like a slow overture, a promise of themes to come. The trees do not leap into growth. They test the air. They wait for certainty. Some bloom early, some delay. This variation is part of the music. Each species keeping its own time signature. You walk through the early green, light as lace, and hear the quiet harmonies begin. Then summer comes, not with subtlety, but fullness. The canopy thickens, branches stretch long with purpose. Photosynthesis accelerates. The light is strong, and the trees drink deeply of it. Sugars are made in vast quantities, filling trunks, feeding roots, offering sweetness to flowers, fruits, and guests. Summer is the crescendo. Every leaf is an instrument. Every breeze is a conductor's hand. Every shadow is shaped by sun and motion. You sit beneath a beech tree and close your eyes. The world above you rustles and breathes. Somewhere, a woodpecker taps out its own percussion. Somewhere, bees carry vibrations from flower to hive. The forest is alive with sound, not loud, but layered. Summer is a season of expansion. Branches push out their final growth. Seeds begin to form. Young saplings reach upward, practicing their first solo notes. Even the mycorrhizal threads underground pulse with activity, moving water, carbon, information. There is generosity here. The trees feed others. The sun feeds the trees. Life circulates like music, not staying in one place, but flowing in cycles. Everything grows toward something. Then comes the shift. At first, it's subtle. The sun setting a little earlier. The nights cooling by a breath. The insects growing quieter. And just like that, the song begins to change. Autumn does not arrive in silence. It comes in rich harmonies. A burst of color. A slow decrescendo. The trees, having worked and reached and stretched all summer, begin to turn inward. Their green fades and pigments hidden all year begin to surface. Gold, amber, crimson, rust. It's not decay, it's choreography. As chlorophyll fades, other chemicals take center stage. Anthocyanins, flavonols, carotenoids, each with their own hue, their own voice in the symphony. You walk beneath a maple now, its leaves glowing like embers. One drifts downward, another follows. The ground becomes a new staff, filled with fallen notes. Autumn is a time of remembering. Trees begin to reabsorb nutrients from their leaves, pulling nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus back into their trunks and roots for safekeeping. They're packing for winter. Conserving what they've made, they release what's no longer needed. With grace and in letting go, they become more beautiful. The forest quiets, not silent, never silent, but softer, as if holding its breath before the next long phrase. You step through leaves that crackle underfoot and feel a kind of gratitude from the trees around you. They've done their work, they've played their part. Now comes the long rest. Winter arrives without applause. There is no blooming, no rustle of new leaves, only stillness. And in that stillness, rest, recovery, resilience. Trees do not sleep, exactly, but their metabolism slows. Water moves reluctantly. Roots hold steady. Energy is stored deep in wood and root. You imagine the sugars packed tightly, away like instruments tucked in velvet cases. The forest is not idle. It is simply waiting, waiting with wisdom. Some trees drop all their leaves. Others, evergreens, hold theirs, waxy and stiff against the cold. Each species has its method of enduring. Some trees use antifreeze proteins to protect their cells from freezing. Some shed entire limbs to lighten their load. Some bend beneath the snow, flexing rather than snapping. Even in stillness, there is adaptation. You run your glove along the bark of a sleeping tree. It feels cold, but not dead. You can sense life curled deep inside, not gone, just paused. Even music needs rest between the notes. In this quiet, the forest listens, it absorbs. Snowfall, it rests its roots in the silence. It conserves, so that it may begin again. The rhythm here is not one of urgency, it is one of trust. The trees know spring will come because it always has. You begin to trust that rhythm too. You sit beneath a pine now, its needles catching tiny flakes of frost. The branches do not move, but you know they are preparing. The buds are deciduous. Trees tightly closed now, already hold next year's leaves. Even in cold, the plan continues. The rhythm is stored in every cell. Trees do not need to be awake, to be ready. You think of your own life, how it moves through seasons, times of bloom, times of gathering, times of rest. You, too, are not meant to grow endlessly. Even your quiet seasons are part of the song. Some years, the symphony shifts. A late frost, a dry summer, a storm in spring. The trees adjust their tempo. A leaf may bud early or fall late. A flower may bloom half-heartedly or not at all, but the rhythm remains. Not every season is perfect, but every season plays its part. You rise and walk slowly along the path. The light is fading now, the air cool and hushed. You pass a grove where the trees form an open circle. Their branches do not touch, but their shadows do. In spring, they'll bud together. In summer, they'll shade one another. In autumn, they'll carpet the ground with shared color. And in winter, they'll stand like ancient statues, separate, but in harmony. Each one follows the music in its own way. You pause once more to listen. There's no single note to hear, but there is a feeling, a vibration beneath the quiet. Like a hum you can't quite place. The forest is playing time, and you are not just listening, you are part of the song. You exhale, and the trees seem to exhale with you. The music of the seasons fades into stillness, not an ending, but a pause. And beneath the quiet rhythm, something deeper stirs in the soil, beginning to feel its way. You stand still in the forest, eyes closed. The wind has quieted, the canopy above no longer rustling with movement. The world feels wrapped in stillness. And yet, you know the forest is far from still. Beneath your feet, something is unfolding. Something older than branches, older than leaves. A map written without ink, drawn in patience. Roots. Roots are not just anchors. They are sensors, explorers, negotiators. They reach through the soil like fingertips, threading through darkness with quiet intention. They press gently into earth, feel moisture gradients, seek softness, turn away from stone. They wind around obstacles, adjust to pressure, grow toward what is needed. A seedling begins with a single root, downward before upward. It doesn't reach for light, not yet. It listens to the world below. Only when it finds enough water, enough space, enough truth, does it begin to rise. You kneel and press your palm into the soil. It's soft here, crumbling slightly beneath your weight. You imagine the root tips just below, some as fine as hairs, some thick as fingers. They branch, divide, and branch again, weaving through the soil like a living lace dot, and at each tip, a decision, go this way or that. Roots are not aimless. They grow with purpose. They follow gradients of water, zones of warmth, even traces of nutrient-rich bacteria. They sense the presence of nearby roots from their own tree or from neighbors. They touch, test, and sometimes pause. Some roots avoid each other. Others grow toward one another, forming connections. If you could shrink small enough, become soil-sized, you would see them bending like dancers. Root tips curve in slow motion, avoiding conflict or seeking alliance. In dense forests, where trees are crowded and soil is shared, roots do not just compete, they communicate. Scientists have watched as root systems slow their growth when encountering relatives, as if recognizing family. Others shift direction to avoid overlapping with neighbors, maintaining distance to reduce stress. The forest battleground is not random, it is relational. You walk softly now, imagining each footfall echoing into the root world. Your weight presses into the pathways roots have drawn, a labyrinth hidden just beneath the surface. For every tree you see above ground, there may be just as much or more stretching out below, not just in depth, but in reach. A mature oak can send roots 2 or 3 times wider than its canopy. A pine may stretch through rocky soil for meters in search of what it needs. The shape of a tree is only half its story, and at the very edge of each root's reach are the root hairs, impossibly fine, tender filaments that absorb most of the tree's water and nutrients. They live only for days. Then they are replaced. Tiny, ephemeral feelers, tasting the soil, breathing the chemistry of the ground. You imagine these root hairs brushing past grains of sand, wrapping gently around, particles of clay, pausing at pockets of moisture. They do not see, but they know where they are. They sense direction. They remember pressure. They learn the textures of the world. Roots respond to sound. In one experiment, scientists found that roots would grow toward the sound of running water, even when no moisture was present. Somehow they detected the vibration, the promise of hydration, and adjusted their growth accordingly. The forest, even below ground, is not deaf. It listens in all directions. And when roots find what they're listening for, water, nutrients, warmth, they don't just absorb, they share. You pass a cedar, tall and weathered. Its trunk is strong, but its story lies underground. Its roots intertwine with those of a younger tree nearby. Through fungal threads, they pass sugars, minerals, even information about environmental stress. But the roots themselves also send signals, electrical pulses and chemical cues. At the tip of every root is a cap of sensitive cells, wrapped in a gel-like sheath that protects as the root moves forward. These cells detect gravity, moisture, pressure, and touch. They guide the root like a quiet compass, even underground. The tree knows where it is. Roots also host communities all around them, live millions of bacteria, fungi, nematodes, and other microscopic life, a teeming world called the rhizosphere. It is one of the most biodiverse zones on Earth, and the tree helps shape it. Roots release exudates, sugars, amino acids, organic acids into the soil. These attract helpful microbes, encourage fungal partnerships, and even ward off unwanted organisms. In return, the microbes offer services, breaking down nutrients, warding off disease, improving soil structure. It is a conversation spoken through chemistry, and you realize the tree's understanding of its world begins here. In the roots, you walk a little farther and come to a gentle slope. Rain has exposed part of the root system of a fallen tree. You crouch beside it, tracing the long, winding roots with your eyes. Some are thick, reaching deep into the earth. Others curl close to the surface, like open hands. You notice small nodules, a sign of past partnerships with nitrogen-fixing bacteria. These tiny factories once converted atmospheric nitrogen into a form the tree could use, all underground, all in silence. Even in decay, these roots tell the story of connection. They fed, they listened, they reached. You pressed your hand into the earth again. It feels different now. Not just soil, but memory. A space shaped by slow movement, by decisions made in darkness. By sensing, touching, adapting, you begin to feel a kinship with these roots, not because you grow the same way, but because you, too, learn from what you feel, the world beneath your surface, your own roots. Respond to pressure, to presence, to change. Your body stores memory in tension and ease, in openness and closing. Trees do it in wood. You do it in muscle, in breath, in silence. You sit for a while at the edge of the exposed root system. Sunlight filters through the canopy in long, golden stripes. A breeze stirs the leaves, but the ground remains still. And yet, below the surface, you know movement continues. Root tips pressing forward, cells dividing, water flowing, fungal threads gliding between roots, like invisible wires you think of. The word radical, the first root that emerges from a seed, Its name comes from the same root as radical. A beginning, a foundation, a turning point. Every tree began that way. One root searching downward. Every story begins by reaching into the unknown. You rise slowly and brush your hands against your thighs. The forest feels different now, not just above you, but below. It holds more layers than you imagined. You begin walking again, feet soft on the path. With every step, you feel the hidden world beneath. The root maps of trees long gone, the pathways of fungi, the touch of lives that never rose into leaf. You wonder how far the roots of the trees beside you reach, and if, in their own way, they feel your presence ahead. You spot a clearing where sunlight pulls warmly. You walk into it slowly and feel the sudden shift, brightness, space, air. The trees here are younger. Perhaps something opened this patch, a fallen trunk, a fire, a decision made underground, some roots. After all, do not just sense water and stone, they sense the absence of another dot. And in that space, they send forth shoots, claiming what is open, out of loss. A new shape begins. You pause. The trees around you are spaced differently now. Their roots less tangled, their trunks more slender, but the language of the ground is still here. You kneel one last time, brushing your fingers across the forest floor. You picture a root reaching outward, slow, certain, and kind. It doesn't know what it will find, but it reaches anyway. The light shifts, and a single leaf drifts downward, spinning, soft, toward the soil. Where it lands, something beneath it stirs. Roots shift gently. Fungi wake. The underground network responds. And far above, a new kind of generosity begins to rise. You walk now where the forest once burned. The air holds no smoke. The fire has long passed, but its memory lingers in charcoal streaks along bark, in stumps blackened and cracked, in the silver silence of trunks stripped bare, still. The ground beneath your feet is not dead. In fact, it pulses with new life, tiny. Shoots push through ash-soft soil. Ferns uncurl like green question marks. Sunlight floods the clearing where branches once blocked the sky. There is damage here, yes, but also a kind of lightness. Space, breath. The forest is beginning again. Fire in the forest is not always disaster, it is destruction. Yes, fierce, fast, and often wild. But it is also restoration, transformation, a release of what has become too dense, too heavy, too closed, and sometimes it is the only way through. For centuries, trees have lived with fire. Some need it, some expect it. Some prepare for it in silence. In certain forests, fire is a pattern, part of the seasonal rhythm, sparked by lightning, by heat, by wind. The trees have learned not just to survive it, but to grow with it. You pass a stand of young lodgepole pines. Their trunks are thin, their needles bright. You look down and see their fallen cones scattered like curled wooden scales. Inside those cones are seeds, tiny lives waiting in stillness. But they do not open in rain, or wind, or sun. They open in flame. Lodgepole pines, like many other fiery trees, produce ceratness, cones, sealed shut with resin so thick that only high heat can melt it. When fire sweeps through, the resin softens, the cones crack open, and seeds held tight for years fall to the forest floor, not into ruin, but into opportunity. Where the fire clears brush, light reaches soil. Where thick roots once blocked the way, space is made. and from blackened ground, green returns. You kneel beside one of these tiny seedlings, only inches tall. It was not born despite the fire. It was born because of it. Fire clears away what time clutters. It reduces dead wood to carbon. It lifts nutrients into smoke and then rains them back down with ash. It opens up sunlight, unlocks soil, cracks open ancient seeds. You touch the blackened bark of a standing tree and feel the ridges where heat once licked upward. It survived, scorched but strong. Some trees carry thick bark as armor, grown over years like layered shields. Ponderosa pines, sequoias, and redwoods, they all wear fire's touch as part of their design. They do not fear it, they prepare. You walk slowly, observing how the fire reshaped the landscape. Some trunks are hollowed, standing like ghost towers. Others have fallen, giving way to ferns and fungus. Moss clings to blackened stone. Tiny birds flit through the new understory. Insects explore what was once buried beneath dense shade. The fire did not end the forest. It edited it in many indigenous cultures. Fire was once welcomed, even invited. Controlled burns, timed with care, cleared underbrush, enriched soil, and protected old trees from catastrophic flames. These cultural fires respected the forest's needs, honoring both its fragility and its strength. Fire, used wisely, became a healer, but in many places, this relationship was severed for decades. Fire suppression policies aimed to stop all burning, fearing destruction, fearing loss. And so the forest thickened, dead wood piled, underbrush grew heavy, trees crowded each other in darkness, and then, when fire finally came, it came too fiercely. You pause beside a dead cedar, fallen across the path. Its core is hollowed to ash, but fungi have already begun to bloom across its sides. Nature wastes nothing. Even in death, the tree is becoming something new inside the soil. The nutrients from the burn begin their quiet work. Potassium, calcium, magnesium, all returned to earth. Seeds from grasses, wildflowers, and pioneer trees sense the chemistry change. Many wait for this moment, tuned to smoke, to char, to light. Fire, it turns out, is a kind of invitation. You sit for a while on a smooth stone, watching how the light moves now. Before the fire, this place was likely dim, crowded. Only the canopy reached the sun. Now, shafts of gold spill across young shoots and sleeping seeds. Space has been made for what's next. You think of pruning, how even in a garden, growth sometimes requires cutting. The forest has done the same, painful, honest, necessary. Some species do not just survive fire, they signal each other through it. Smoke triggers germination in many plants. In some fire-prone ecosystems, like the Australian bush, certain seeds lie dormant for years. Their shells so tough, they only open after sensing carcinogens. Chemical compounds released by burning vegetation. Smoke becomes language. Fire becomes cue. Even destruction speaks in the forest, and some lives are born by listening. You walk again, your shoes brushing through ash, softened by time. A sapling leans toward you, barely a year old, its leaves trembling in the wind. You gently touch its stem. It's thin, flexible, but its roots hold strong. You smile at its ness. To be born into a world still smoldering. To grow, not knowing what came before, but trusting what's to come. There's a kind of wisdom in that. You remember now how fire also moves. Underground, it doesn't just leap from branch to branch. It can travel through roots, through buried fuel, through dry soil. And yet even here, life. You pause again near the sapling you first noticed, still green, still small, still held in place by something unseen. You do not know who sends it sugar. You only know someone does. And in that knowing, something quiet unfolds. A question: if trees give beyond kin, beyond self, beyond certainty, what else might they understand? You walk on, the forest dimming slightly, branches brushing overhead. Behind you, a sapling trembles gently in the breeze, fed by roots not its own. You wonder, if a tree can care across difference, could it also remember beyond itself? And what does it mean when an entire forest begins to think? You step softly into a denser part of the forest now. The light has changed, not dim, but filtered, as if the trees are holding it gently, letting it pass through in pieces. You feel the hush deepen, not from silence, but from something quieter still. It feels contemplative, like being inside a long breath. You pause beneath a western hemlock and place your palm against the trunk, solid, ancient, patient. It has stood here for, perhaps, a century, maybe more. And in that time, it has faced wind, drought, disease, and still it grows. But not reactively, not reflexively. Deliberately, it begins to occur to you. This tree doesn't just survive, it chooses. We often measure intelligence by speed. A thought in your brain takes a fraction of a second. A message zips from neuron to neuron, a spark leaping across synapses. Action follows swiftly, the blink of an eye, the twitch of a muscle. But trees don't blink. They don't twitch, and yet they know inside the cambium, the soft growing layer beneath the bark, cells stretch and divide. When roots find a dry patch of soil, the tree shifts its chemistry. When shade lingers too long, growth adjusts toward the light. When neighboring trees fall, the branches spread wider. Leaves thicken. It does not happen in seconds. It happens in seasons. And that too is a kind of thinking. You walk slowly, your breath matching the pace of your steps. To think, after all, does not require a brain. It requires awareness, response, change in trees. This intelligence is distributed, each root tip senses, each leaf responds, each cell carries part of the network. It is not centralized. It is shared. Consider this. When a tree's roots encounter toxins in the soil, they change direction. When the canopy loses a limb, resources are rerouted. When attacked by insects, defense chemicals surge not only in the damaged area, but throughout the entire organism. These are not automatic reactions. They are coordinated, thoughtful in their way. The tree gathers information, water, light, pressure, scent, and makes a decision. But it does so at the speed of wood. You stop beside a twisted maple. Its trunk leans, then straightens, shaped over decades by sun, storm, and the silent pressure of neighboring branches. What looks accidental is actually adaptive. Each bend a response, each scar a lesson. Science is beginning to see trees differently now, no longer as static structures, but as dynamic participants, aware, responsive, even in some definitions, intelligent. They have memory. They alter future behavior based on past experience. They communicate across space and species. They prioritize. If you remove a single branch, the tree doesn't just grow another. It assesses where light falls, where nutrients are best allocated, and where it is safest to invest new energy. It considers. You take a seat on a fallen log, cushioned in moss, and feel yourself settle deeper. The forest's thinking is not like yours, but perhaps that is not a limitation, only a different kind of knowing, slow, relational, rooted. There is a concept in science called plant neurobiology. Not because plants have neurons, they don't, but because their signaling systems resemble nervous systems in complexity. Electric impulses travel through their tissues. Chemical messengers modulate growth and defense. Some even respond to anesthetics, stopping certain functions when exposed, to compounds that dull awareness in animals, and when those compounds wear off, the tree resumes its work, as if waking. You wonder now, what does the forest know? Not fact, but feeling, environment, pattern. Perhaps a tree knows the shape of drought before it begins. Perhaps it remembers last year's insects and shifts its chemistry accordingly. Perhaps it notices the death of a neighbor and changes how it shares sugar underground. Not in panic, not in grief, but in response. That too is wisdom. You rise and walk again, your fingertips brushing bark as you pass. The forest begins to feel like a body, not of one tree, but of many, each connected, each sensing, each contributing. A distributed mind woven through soil and sapwobe in this body. Time flows differently. Where you rush to conclusions, the trees delay. Where you seek answers, the forest waits for change. What looks like stillness is simply a longer form of motion. When a seed lands in darkness, the tree-to-be may pause for years, waiting. Only when light breaks through does growth begin, not just upward, but inward. Roots first, then shoot. This is not hesitation, it is timing. You pass a grove of beeches, their leaves whispering in a light breeze. Some of them have grown together. So long their roots have fused. They no longer compete. They share. They've learned over years how to survive as a group. You wonder, is this wisdom? Not book learning, not logic, but longevity. An understanding that endures. Trees don't move from place to place, so their awareness is shaped by staying. They learn the soil beneath them, the angle of the sun, the taste of the rain. They memorize the rhythm of season and storm. They make peace with repetition, and they find, in slowness, a way to thrive. You stop beneath a tall fir and gaze upward. It does not see you, but it knows. You're here. Your breath shifts the air. Your steps compress the soil. Your presence becomes part of its data. Nothing is missed, only absorbed differently. Even loss shapes thought in the forest. When a tree falls, its gap in the canopy is not a silence. It is an opening. Light pours through. Seeds awaken. Roots respond. The forest learns from absence. It heals in pattern. It grows toward restoration. You realize, slowly, that this too is thinking. Trees remember, through ring width, through chemical signatures, through adjustments passed to future leaves and seeds. A forest that lived through fire grows differently. The next time, a sapling whose mother endured drought carries that awareness in its tissues, not as emotion, but as preparation. Generations shaped by what came before. You return to the question from before. Can a forest think? Not in language, not in symbols, but in form, in roots that twist with memory, in leaves that open with confidence, in branches that adapt across lifetimes. It may not be our kind of mind, but perhaps that's the point. You sit one last time. This time beside a yew, old, quiet, small. Its bark is scarred. Its roots are deep. It's not impressive by height, but it has endured. You wonder how long it's been listening to rain, to the shifting voices of wind, to the chemistry of passing animals, to the weight of snowfall, a life of attention, a slow, silent, steady conversation. You close your eyes and match its stillness. No answer comes, no flash of thought, only a calm awareness. This is not sleep, it is presence, the kind that sees without rushing, that adjusts without panic, that learns without forgetting. You rise slowly and walk on, the trail curving toward light. The forest behind you remains alive, attentive, unhurried. You look back once more, and the question returns. If the forest can respond, if it can learn, if it can change and remember and share, is that not a kind of consciousness? A deeper mind spread wide, rooted far, and thinking in decades. You wonder now, if a forest thinks with roots and light, what does it dream with? You follow a shaft of sunlight deeper into the trees, where thought dissolves into feeling, and feeling into green. Somewhere in the hush, something more than memory stirs, not knowledge, but breath. You stand still for a moment, no wind, no bird call, only your breath rising, falling, quiet as a falling leaf. You inhale slowly, and wonder where that breath began. Was it born in the canopy? Did it pass through needles, drift along the edge of a fern, stir the dust in the hollow of an oak? You breathe in again, softer now, and with that breath you carry a gift. Every inhale is a thread the forest gives you. Oxygen made from light, water, and air flows into your lungs, into your blood, into the very center of you. Each cell welcomes it. Each heartbeat moves it. And as you breathe out, you return carbon dioxide, not as waste, but as offering. The trees accept it. They use it to build bark, leaf, root. You are not just walking through the forest. You are breathing with it. You sit now on a moss-covered stone and feel the rhythm of breath. Inhale, exhale, give, receive. You and the tree beside you are part of a single conversation. Quiet, essential, unending. Neither of you speaks, and yet everything is said. The forest takes sunlight, invisible, weightless, and weaves it into matter. Photosynthesis. You may remember the word from long ago, but now it feels closer. Imagine it. Sunlight strikes a leaf. Water, drawn from the soil, rises through narrow vessels. Carbon dioxide, drawn from your breath, enters through tiny pores, and in a burst of ancient alchemy, the leaf transforms it all into sugar, into energy, into oxygen. A breath turned to bark, a photon turned to fiber. You place your hand on your chest and feel your lungs expand. A tree helped you do that. Trees are not just rooted in the earth. They are rooted in you. The calcium in your bones, once swirled in ocean currents that fed the first land plants. The carbon in your skin, once locked in ancient trunks, now released and recycled. Even the hemoglobin that colors your blood echoes. The chlorophyll in leaves, two molecules, two colors, both carrying life. One holds oxygen in your lungs. The other frees it in the sun. Different bodies, same story. You close your eyes, imagining your body as a kind of tree. Your ribs curve like branches, your spine a trunk. Blood vessels reach outward like roots, seeking. You too are a system of flow. Food becomes fuel. Air becomes movement. Memory becomes motion. You walk, you grow, you respond to light and shadow, to warmth and cold, Just like the forest, you feel hunger and eat what the forest once offered. Fruit, rich with sugars, shaped in green light. Nuts, wrapped in shells grown beneath leaves. Grains, once waving in wind beneath open sky. Your digestion is a quiet remembering, a tree turned inward. And when your body finishes, what it cannot use returns to the world, to soil, to root. To cycle, nothing is lost, only transformed. Trees feed you in ways you rarely notice. They filter the air, they cool the ground, they calm the storm, they soften the sun. And in their presence, something in you slows, your heart eases. Your thoughts lengthen, your breath deepens. This is not magic, it is recognition. Some scientists study how forest air changes the body in Japan. They call it Shinrin-yoku, forest bathing. No water involved, only immersion in green. Only time spent among trunks and shadows. Light and stillness. Cortisol drops, blood pressure lowers, immune cells become more active. The forest isn't just scenery, it's chemistry. Walk long enough beneath trees, and your senses shift. You begin to smell the language of leaves. You hear the rhythm of birds and branches. You notice your own steps, quieter now, more careful. You are remembering an older pace, the one your ancestors knew, when the forest was not a place to visit, but a place to belong. The forest shaped your body over millennia, your fingers skilled at gathering, your ears tuned to rustle and call, your eyes evolved to see shades of green more clearly than any other hue. Even your emotions respond to trees. Their presence soothes, their absence grieves. You do not know why, only that it is true. You lie. Back now, gazing through the canopy, fractals of leaf and light above you, and something within settles a kind of homecoming. Because the forest is not just out there, it is in here to dot the carbon in your breath, the minerals in your teeth, the water in your blood. All once part of something older, taller, quieter. You are made of forest. Even your breath holds memory. The oxygen in your lungs might have come from a pine in Canada, or a kelp forest in the sea, or a moss patch high in the Andes. It traveled in wind, danced through rain, passed between lungs and leaves. It is old, it is shared. You are not breathing alone. You rise slowly and walk again. The breeze feels cooler on your skin now, the light softer on your eyelids. You pass a cedar and catch its scent resinous, ancient, grounding. And you remember, scent is language too. The forest speaks to your body in molecules, in oils and spores, in pollen and breeze. It speaks not to your mind, but to your blood, your breath, your bones. You pause at a tree's base, placing your palm against its bark. Rough, alive, steady. This too is a heartbeat, just slower. The tree's pulse is in its flow of sap, its breath in the opening and closing of stomata, its hunger in the stretch of roots toward water. You press your hand to your chest and feel your own rhythm. And for a moment, you are not so different. Once, long ago, there were forests of your kind, groves of early humans, walking, learning, adapting, their tools shaped from branches, their shelters woven from limbs. Even now, your homes are framed in wood, your books printed on pressed leaves, your music strung through hollow trees. The forest is not gone. It has only changed form, even your stories. Remember, myths of trees that speak, sacred groves, ancestor spirits in bark, the world tree connecting sky and root. These are not just tales, they are memories passed through time. A way of saying, you belong to this, you come from this, and perhaps, one day, you return to it. When your breath finally stills, many years from now, your body will feed the roots again. You will give back what you borrowed, and the forest will remember you, not with names, but with growth. A sapling might rise from the minerals in your bones. A mushroom may bloom where you once lay. A leaf might open with atoms you once carried. This is not an end, only another transformation. You are not apart from the forest, that you are a temporary shape of its memory, a moving expression of its breath. A branch, walking. You stop at a clearing. The wind moves gently across your face, and you inhale deeply once more. The breath fills you, soothes you, softens you, and you think, perhaps, if we could speak with trees, we would not need many words. Just the sound of breathing, just the sound of being dot and now. You begin to wonder if trees and humans share the same atoms. If we are branches of the same great body, then what might we hear if we could truly listen? Not just with ears, but with the whole body. What might the forest be saying? Not in voice, but in feeling. You close your eyes, breathing in the stillness, a leaf's exhale, a root's whisper, and somewhere beneath your ribs, something ancient listens back. Perhaps, you think, the forest is not waiting to speak, but waiting to be heard. You stand at the edge of a clearing, your feet in the moss, your hands at rest. The forest does not stir, not in the way you're used to. No voice calls out. Number, syllables shape the wind, and yet you feel it, a kind of attention, a presence just beneath the silence. And for a moment, the question returns, quiet but steady. Could we ever speak to trees? You've heard their stories, in rings, in roots, in the exhale of leaves. You've walked through their conversations, shared through scent, through shadow, through soil. But these are not conversations in the way you know them. There are no verbs, no vowels, no questions, no replies, only shifts, only rhythms, only a forest learning and leaning, always listening, always responding. You think of language, your own kind, built on sound and air, on tongue and breath, a system made to be heard across distance, shaped by mouths, interpreted by brains. Trees have no mouths, no lungs, no ears, and yet they understand change. They sense danger, they recognize kin, they remember drought. If this is not language, it is something close. Some scientists call it signaling, others chemical communication. In the soil, in the leaves, even in the way a tree bends or blooms, there is message. When an acacia tree is bitten by a giraffe, it releases ethylene gas, a chemical signal warning nearby trees to produce bitterness in their leaves. When a pine forest is under insect attack, volatile compounds drift across the canopy, alerting neighbors before the invaders arrive. It's not speech, but it says something. Something that means, be ready, be aware, change now or suffer later. And those nearby, they do. But what about us? Can we enter that language? Can we be more than observers, more than guests? Could a human, just once, say something to a tree and be heard? You take a few steps forward and place your palm on a smooth beech trunk. What would you say, if you could? Hello, thank you, I see you. The tree doesn't move, doesn't reply, but still, something in the stillness shifts. Not because you've been answered, but because you asked. Maybe speaking to a tree doesn't begin with sound at all. Maybe it begins with attention, with time, with presence, with sitting long enough that your breath begins to slow, your thoughts begin to match the pace of leaf and lichen. Maybe you don't speak to the tree, maybe you speak with it. There are humans who try, botanists who record electric signals in sap and roots, artists who turn leaf movement into melody, engineers building sensors to track moisture, carbon, growth. They ask questions with wires and data, and sometimes the trees answer in pulses and patterns, a shift in voltage, a pause in sap flow, a leaf folding just slightly sooner than expected. Not words, but response. Some traditions have always known how to listen. In many indigenous cultures, trees are seen not as mute matter, but as beings with spirit, with agency, with wisdom. Not metaphorically, literally. A tree is a teacher, a counsel member, an elder. You approach not with questions, but with respect. You listen with your whole body, not for voice, but for feeling, and in that quiet, stories come. Science often seeks answers, but listening does not always bring clarity. Sometimes it brings connection, sometimes confusion, sometimes just the comfort of being heard. And trees, slow as they are, do listen. They register pressure, chemistry, light. They notice when the soil is compacted, when the air is polluted, when the climate shifts. They adjust gently, or they perish silently. Either way, they respond. You walk now through younger growth, saplings reaching, thin trunks leaning. You pass a cedar with bark split by wind, and a maple just beginning to turn gold. Each one has its own way of speaking, some through fragrance, some through form, some through how they die and how they return. A language with no single grammar, number, punctuation, only patterns. To speak to trees, maybe we must become more like them, slower, more patient, more willing to feel without the need to define. Maybe speaking is not about sending messages, but about being changed by the presence of another. Maybe the conversation has already begun, and we've only just started hearing it. You remember now the tiny hairs on root tips, how they feel their way through darkness, how they recognize stones, avoid toxins, grow toward nutrients, how they form alliances with fungi, build networks, create exchanges, and still no sound, just intention, just structure, just learning. In a lab, a scientist places a young plant in a pot of dry soil beside one with water. The roots grow not randomly, but toward the moisture. They seek not by sight, not by instinct alone, by awareness. This is not human consciousness, but it is not unknowing. You reach the base of an old oak and sit, back against bark, breath steady. Could we ever speak? Two trees, perhaps not in words, but maybe in return. You lower your voice, not because someone is sleeping, but because something is listening. You speak softly now, barely above a whisper. I see you, I thank you, I'm still learning, and you don't expect an answer, but you notice the way the breeze curls around your shoulder, the way the shadows shift across your hands. A reply, a coincidence, or simply a moment shared. Perhaps the question isn't whether we can speak to trees. Perhaps the deeper question is, can we still remember how to listen? Can we quiet ourselves enough to hear the difference between sound and noise, between message and motion? Can we open a space wide enough inside us that another's silence might echo? You think now of how trees hold time, not in seconds, but in seasons, not in minutes, but in moisture, not in clocks, but in the color of leaves, the width of rings, the slowness of bloom. To speak to something like that, you'd have to change your own rhythm. You'd have to speak slowly enough to be understood. Imagine that kind of voice, a conversation that unfolds across months, a question that blooms in spring and is answered by fall, not rushed, not loud, only steady, only true. Some trees live for centuries, a few for thousands of years. They have seen empires rise and fall, watched glaciers retreat, listened as birds evolve new songs, and rivers found new paths. What would you ask if one of them could answer? And, more importantly, would you be willing to wait long enough to understand? You rise once more, brushing pine needles from your lap. The air tastes clean, the canopy rustles lightly above you, not with speech, but with breath, and it occurs to you, maybe the forest has been speaking all along. Maybe its words are the shape of branches, its phrases the bend of trunks, its messages carried in wind, in scent, in shade. Maybe you've been part of the conversation from the start, but only just now begun to listen. You walk slowly back through the trees, your pace unhurried, your heart softened, and with each step you ask not how to speak, but how to receive, how to notice the shift of light on bark, how to feel the meaning of stillness, how to understand the root's answer, even when you cannot see it. Because in the end, maybe the forest doesn't need your voice. Maybe it only needs your presence, your patience, your wonder, and in return, it will show you something even deeper than speech. You pause beneath a pine whose needles whisper with the breeze. You place your hand against the trunk, and this time say nothing, and in that silence, you hear everything. You walk toward the edge of the forest now, its hush trailing behind you like a promise. And as you step into the fading light, one last thought follows you. If trees have been speaking all along, then what have they been saying about us? You return to the place where you began. The path winds gently beneath your feet. Twilight rests on your shoulders like a soft shawl. And around you, the forest breathes, slow, vast, unspoken. It hasn't changed, but you have. All this time, the trees have been waiting, not for your footsteps, not for your voice, only for your stillness, because stillness is how the forest speaks and how it listens. You stop beside a wide, low oak, gnarled and dappled with moss. It stretches its arms out around you like an elder inviting you close. There are no questions now, no facts to gather, no answers to chase. Only presence, only quiet. You sit at its base and close your eyes. No sound, then a rustle, a wing overhead, a sigh in the leaves, and beneath it all, a deeper hush, a silence that isn't empty, but full. The forest has always been teaching you, not in books or diagrams, but in the shape of branches, the spacing of trunks, the rhythm of decay and bloom. It teaches through time, through patience, through watching. Its wisdom doesn't arrive like a lesson. It arrives like moonlight on bark, like the way your breath slows when no one is speaking, like a memory that surfaces not in thought, but in feeling. Stillness is not the absence of movement. It is a kind of waiting, a readiness to notice. The way a root waits for rain, the way a bud waits for spring, the way a forest waits for the return of light after fire. In this quiet, you begin to feel the truth. You are not apart from the forest. You are made of the same patterns. Breath, response, renewal, inside your body. Trillions of cells rest and pulse, breathe and rebuild, all in silence. Your heart does not ask permission to beat. Your lungs do not speak their rhythms aloud, and yet they know what to do. They know how to keep you alive, just as the forest knows how to endure. You are two versions of the same stillness, one walking, one rooted, both living. The moon rises above the canopy, casting silver across the ferns. It touches everything gently, stone, leaf, skin. You look up and feel it on your cheeks like water, soft, weightless, and beneath it, shadows lengthen, slow arms of darkness folding over moss. The world dims, but your awareness sharpens you. Notice the gentle crackle of bark expanding with night dew, the sway of a vine shifting in a breeze you didn't feel. The hush beneath the hush. It is here, in the deep silence, that connection becomes clearest, not because something is said, but because nothing needs to be. The roots of the forest stretch below you, touching, sensing, remembering. You are cradled by a network older than memory. Above you, stars begin to show themselves, one by one, the sky opening like a page. You read it in breaths, in stillness. The forest remembers everything, not in words. In rhythm, the way rings grow wider in generous years. The way trees lean toward or away from each other. The way fallen trunks become the soft ground for new saplings. Nothing is forgotten. It is all held in the architecture of silence. Even death in the forest is not a silence of ending. It is a silence of change. A tree falls, and the hush after is not emptiness. It is anticipation. Spores arrive. Moss softens bark. Insects carve paths, and life begins again. Stillness becomes nourishment, and stillness becomes song. You lean back now, your spine against the warm curve of trunk. You close your eyes and let your senses drift outward. You don't need to do anything. The forest carries the moment. You float, untethered, but held. Your breath slows to the rhythm of leaves. In, out, a lullaby with no melody, yet perfect. In time, the word rest often means stopping, but in the forest, rest means becoming part of something larger. You are no longer alone. You are a thread in the stillness, a note in a chord played by 1,000 leaves, a pause between bird calls as you sink deeper into rest. You remember that everything you've learned about networks and warning signals and root conversations was already part of the hush. You just needed to slow down enough to hear it. The silence is not empty. It is filled with unseen motion, fungi spreading like veins beneath the soil, water climbing through xylem, a fox padding softly in the underbrush, 1,000 movements, none in a hurry, none demanding your attention, but all continuing. Quietly and now, sleep begins to fold its arms around you, not like closing a door, but like becoming a part of something soft and wide, a canopy of rest. You feel your limbs soften, your mind begin to blur around the edges. Thought becomes memory. Memory becomes dream. And even the dream listens. Somewhere nearby, an owl calls. A low, hollow sound, not to startle you, but to mark the hour. Even that sound belongs to the silence. A voice rising within it, not against it. You drift further now. Your breath barely stirs the air. You become still, like root, like stone, like seed, and before sleep takes you completely. A thought passes, like a feather drifting down from high branches. Perhaps the silence of the forest is not quiet at all. Perhaps it is the deepest kind of conversation, one where nothing needs to be said, because everything is already known. In your last waking breath, you understand. The trees do not wait for you to speak. They do not need your words. They only ask that you come open and leave a little quieter than you arrived. You are not separate. You are not outside. You are not above. You are part of the forest's silence. And now it is part of you. Sleep now. Let your thoughts fade like stars behind dawn. Let your breath nestle into the folds of the earth. The forest is still here. Always here. Its hush will hold you. Its roots will remember you. Its silence will carry you home. You slip into sleep, your body folding into the forest's rhythm, and in the soft quiet of your final breath tonight, the trees hold you gently, as if they always knew you'd return.